Well, guys, I'm back out here visiting again out in California. I'm so excited to be back. It's great to be here. I want to take a minute and give a special shout out to Kim and Alan, my good friends, for having me back in their home. It's so cool to make friends out here, hang out with them back in April, and then come back out here now. And we just picked right up where we left off, and we're right back having the good conversations. I'm going to be, if all goes well, I'm going to be attending the Kamala Harris rally tomorrow in Reno, Nevada. Looking forward to seeing that. We're on a first come, first served basis with the tickets, so we're hoping to get there early enough to get our feet through the door. Either way, I'll be taking you guys along for the ride, and we'll be making some good content along the way, and we'll be seeing the future president of the United States. So that's super exciting. And I'm going to be hanging out some in San Francisco, Sacramento. So that's where I'll be for the next couple of days. That's why the background's going to look a lot different. But I love it out here, and I've made some good friends, and I like to come out here as often as possible because it's good to get away and see and talk with different people. But no matter where I go, we have a lot of the similar conversations. And one conversation that me and my friends picked back up having was how that this election cycle we catch ourselves saying to women that they don't have to tell their husband who they voted for. We've caught ourselves saying that more and more in this election because there are women out there who are afraid to admit out loud to their husband or to their families that they voted for Kamala Harris. And it's not just women, it's a whole lot of people. There's a whole lot of people out there that says they don't know if they want to tell that. And what those of us reasonable people have been telling them is it's none of no one's business who you vote for. When you go into the voting booth and cast your ballot, that's your business. You vote your conscience, you decide which way you want to go on it. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe me an explanation. No one owes anyone an explanation. Voting is your right, and you should be able to exercise it without fear of any retribution. But women are feeling more and more of it, and they're afraid to speak out and say things to their MAGA husbands. And this makes Charlie Kirk one of Donald Trump's biggest fangirls. It makes him big mad, and he's upset with us. He says that women should be obedient to their husbands, and they shouldn't mislead their husbands, and that we're encouraging them to mislead their husbands. Know what I would like to say to Charlie Kirk, and I'm not going to roll any of his clips because I really don't respect the guy, number one, and number two, I don't feel like it, and number three, you're tired of hearing his voice. But what the guy doesn't realize is the fact that we're having to tell women that, and we're having to say that to people and say, hey, you don't have to tell nobody who you vote for. The fact that we have to say that says everything you need to know about Charlie Kirk, the likes of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump, and MAGA, and who they are, because in no other time we've not had to say that in a long time. We've not had to tell women that, but we do now, and we do now because of the rhetoric that we see coming from Trump supporters. They're the ones that always wants to go out there and flex. They're the ones that always wants to go out there with a bazooka across their back at a Wendy's like they're some kind of badass. And anytime they get a chance to rip off their shirt like Hulk Hogan, they're going to do it because that's the kind of temperament they have. And the fact that they have that kind of temperament, and we're having to say, listen, don't worry if this dude goes off on some sort of ultimate warrior tirade, shaking the ropes and being a moron. Don't worry about that. You cast your vote. You cast it for Kamala Harris if that's what you want to do, and you don't owe any of us an explanation. But the reason that makes the people like Charlie Kirk and MAGA mad, and by the way, Charlie Kirk wants to make America great again and take it back to a time before he was born. Dude was born in 1993. He wants to go back to the 50s. I have news for him. If he went back to the 50s and worked his way up, well, we know how he feels about Martin Luther King. We've already covered that on the channel. He would have had a really hard time in the 60s. He would have had a really hard time in the 70s. He would have never probably made it because it would have absolutely broke his spirit that people back then were trying to push us forward just like we're trying to push people forward now. But the fact that we have to have this conversation and say it to women tells you just how ridiculous that MAGA has gotten with their rhetoric. But I've been talking about this not just with my friends out here in California. This is also a conversation that I've had with my family back home. Talked with my good friend Superman Todd about this very subject and how that, women sometimes feel threatened to vote exactly like their husband. And there was a generation back years ago that grew up and they were taught to vote exactly like their husband, or they were taught to not vote and let their husband do the voting for them. And that's the kind of world that Charlie Kirk, a kid born in 1993, wants to go back to. He wants to go back to a world like that. But it reminds me of two stories that I was talking about. I shared a story with my good buddy Superman Todd, and I'm sure he wouldn't care for me sharing this one with you. But my grandmother was 88 years old and had voted Republican her entire life when she cast her vote for Barack Obama. Now, my family, if they see this video on that side of the family, they're not going to hear me say that. They've been trying to say for a long time that Mama was starting to get dementia and Mama was starting to lose her mind. But Mama got tired of the bullshit. And she stood up one day at Sunday dinner and she dinged her spoon on her glass. And she said, "Hey, I want everybody's attention. I'm going to tell you something, because if you hear it anywhere else, you won't believe it." She said, "Back when I first was able to vote, old enough to vote, and could vote, had the right to, your grandpa drove me, my husband drove me to the polls, told me, vote straight down the line for everyone that's got an R beside their name. That's what we are. We're Republicans. Vote for that. Just do what I'm telling you." And because we're Republicans. And she said, "I've done that my entire life. Every time I've went, I've voted straight ticket Republican because that's what he told me to do." She said, "But I'm seeing Barack Obama, and I see that he's a good man. I see he's got a good family, and I see how the Republican Party are treating him." Now, she's seeing it back then. She saw the way, excuse me, she saw the way that he was being treated then. Welcome to California. And so, so she saw how that he was being treated back then. This is before Trump and MAGA. This is back when you had John McCain taking the microphone out of the lady's hand. But she saw how they were treating him, and she said, "I can't do this anymore. You know, I'm going to go into the poll and I'm going to vote for Barack Obama. I prayed long and hard about it. I feel he's a better man for the job." She then got her absentee ballot and voted for Obama in 2012 again, and passed away a couple of days. I can't remember if it was before or after that election, but she got her ballot in before she left one more time for him. Now, the family wants to say Mama was getting dementia, but that was an 88-year-old woman who had always obeyed her husband and did what he told her. On the other hand, Superman Todd had a story about a lady he knew who they've just now talked into voting. She's in her 80s. They've just now talked her into voting because she said, "I've always let my husband do the voting for me. And I don't know if I've never done it in my life. I don't know how. How would I even do it?" And they're saying to her, "We'll walk you through it. We'll show you how to do it. Is this who you want to vote for? If so, we'll show you how to go about it." These kind of stories would really rub the Charlie Kirks of the world the wrong way, and I'm sure it rubs my family the wrong way if they stumble across this video that I've let out the secret on Mama coming to her senses. But, and I really shouldn't say it that way, she finally spoke up and finally stood up for herself, and I'm glad she did so. I'm glad she finally got to go in there and cast the vote her conscience, and not have to worry about what her husband felt about that. And I'm not throwing shade at my grandpa when I say that, but that's not how you go about it. You know, I don't ever want to control a woman and say, "You have to vote exactly like me. Vote down the line with that D beside the name." I'm not going to do that. But there was a time that people did. And there was a time that women either voted because that's what their husband taught them how to do it, or they voted because, or they allowed their husband to vote and vote for the entire family. And so that kind of rhetoric is still going on today. And we're having to remind people that you don't owe anybody a damn thing. You can vote your conscience however you want to. That's your right. You don't owe it to anyone else. But Charlie Kirk says we're encouraging women to mislead their husbands. No, why don't you start? I'll tell you what you do, Charlie. You start talking to your crew and you start telling them, your followers, your listeners, you start telling them to tone down the ridiculous WWE rhetoric. Tell them to leave their racism at the door too while you're at it. Tell them to quit thinking that they have any right to control a woman or tell her what to do, because they don't, okay? This ain't the 1950s. We ain't going back again. We're not going back to the Trump years, and we're sure not going back to the wet dream you have, this leave it to beaver idea that you think exists. It doesn't, and it never did. That's not what we are. America is a big country with a lot of different values, a lot of different ideas. People see things a whole lot of different ways. On our side of the aisle, I see the diversity. There's all kinds of people I meet who identify as progressive or liberal, but yet we catch ourselves disagreeing at times because there's a lot of people out there, and it's a big world, and you need to get out and meet those people and shake their hand and get to know them and hear their struggles. That's what you need to do. So you take care of teaching your dudes to not be assholes, and we will say to any woman out there, you don't have, it's not misleading your husband. You don't owe him a damn thing. You're not his property. He doesn't control you. This 1950s mentality that they want to bring back, to hell with that. To hell with that. We're not going back to that ever. And so, folks, I want to thank you guys so much for subscribing here on my channel. If you haven't already, be sure to. And before I go, I got to give a good shout out to my good buddy Rich. He passed away today. and he was one of the greats. He was someone who supported me in what I did. He was a member who was always encouraging me to speak up. Always proud of him for doing so, and he always had nothing but good things to say and encouragement. And we lost him way too soon. I know that he was looking forward to this election. I know he was looking forward to seeing Kamala Harris become the next president. But he's no longer with us, and it truly breaks my heart. But we're going to be on the right side of history, and if there's another side of this madness, I hope Rich gets to peek over the rails and see us celebrating. But I'm going to be out here for a couple of days having the best time that I can while I'm here, and then I'll be headed back home in time for Election Day. I may randomly go live at any given point. You never know, because I may just see somebody cool and be like, hey, let's talk. So you guys stay tuned, take care, and remember, you don't owe anyone anything when it comes to your vote.